Right, oh, thanks, Ian. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Right, so I'll just read out some blurb before we get going. Welcome to councillors and officers, both from North Devon and Torridge councils, representatives from the police, and any members of the public to the meeting. Have we got any members of the public? At the moment, I don't believe we have. No, okay. This is a meeting of North Devon Council's Crime and Disorder Subcommittee and Torridge District Council's External Overview and Scrutiny Committee. This meeting is being recorded. Please switch off your mobile phones to silent. Fire evacuation procedure. We are not expecting a fire alarm test today. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, you'll be required to leave the building immediately upon direction of the officers present. For those attending remotely, please turn off your cameras and microphones unless you are addressing the committee, in which case you will be advised to turn those on at that point. I would like to remind you that today we will be running two meetings. Firstly, we will open with North Devon Council's agendas items 1 to 5. Then we'll pass over to the Chair of Torridge District Council, Councillor Cottle-Hunkin, to cover the top TDC agendas items 1 to 7. And before we jointly receive the update from Superintendent Toby Davies. Right, everyone clear? Okay, we'll start with item 1 then, please. Apologies for absence, Kate.
I've received apologies from Councillor Milton, Chair.
Thank you. Item 2, to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of November 2022 attached. There's only a couple of members here who were present at that meeting, so I'll propose it. So I have a seconder. Councillor Cam, thank you. Item 3, items brought forward which, in the opinion of the chair, should be considered as by the meeting as a matter of urgency. I just wanted to mention one thing. Find it now, lost it. Oh, it's the not. It's, there it is. Sorry about that. The 9th of December, as in reclaim the 9th March, or parade, I should say, which is part of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. It's a Saturday, the 9th of December, 4:30, starts on the square, and it's a family event with a lantern parade. So just for a minute, so, okay. Item 4, declarations of interests.
I've received them, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item 5, to agree the agenda between Part A and Part B. There is no Part B, so I will now move us on to Torridge Council. Over to Councillor Cottle-Hunkin.
Thank you. Okay, have we got any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we've got apologies from Councillor Shepherd, Councillor Annie Brendan and Stacey Dorey, Head of Legal.
Thank you. If we can confirm the minutes, pages 3 to 7, I'll go through page by page. Page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7. All in agreement? Do we need a proposer?
Yes, please.
I'll propose the seconder, Councillor Harding. All in favour? Councillor Thomas abstaining?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've actually got a meeting next week, as you all know, so we're proposing to defer the action list to the next meeting so that we can get on with the CSP. Everyone's happy. Declarations of interest. Members of interest should refer to the agenda item and describe the nature of their interest when the item is considered. Agreement of agenda items part 1 and 2. There is no part 2, so that's easy. Urgent matters brought forward with the permission of the chair. I would like to raise something here because I think it does relate to the CSP as well. And also the vice chair wasn't able to be here, but she's written a letter for me to read out in relation to the Link Centre, the proposed closures. So She said there was a meeting and Councillor Craigie was also at the meeting at Bideford Link Centre, and they had Councillor McInnes from Devon County Council attend. So she's spoken about what was said there. So the meeting with Devon County Councillor John McInnes and 2 officers from Devon Adult Social Care, Sarah Adams and Tony Wright, was very unsatisfactory. I approached him at the outset to ask if there was a format for the meeting, for example, some ground rules, and whether he was going to give a report on the present position. He replied that there would be no report and that it was all to be informal and relaxed. The Link Centre participants were anxious to know what the current situation was, whether a decision had been made and what alternative provision was to be provided. Their questions and statements hinged on these topics, with many deeply affecting testimony of how the Link Centre had helped and supported them during difficulties. The response from the DCC team was vague and inconclusive. They could not give any reassuring answers to the concerns expressed or adequately explain why worthwhile service delivering good results was being considered for closure other than that of cost cutting. The participants were speaking informally and sometimes together, which is often the case at such meetings with no format. There was no rudeness or any complaints from the body of the meeting about the way people were expressing themselves. However, Councillor McInnes took exception to the way people spoke, criticised the speakers and demanded that he take charge. Without consulting the meeting or asking to be elected, he imposed himself as a chairperson upon the meeting and told those present not to interrupt those he selected to speak. Yet he himself cut speakers off to interpose his views and did not follow his own arbitrary rules. There was a distinct imbalance of power between the Devon County Council attendees and the rest of the group. The impression given was that Devon County Council was in charge, and many questions about alternative arrangements, suitable venues, staffing, cost comparisons and duplication with other provision were not addressed by the DCC personnel. And she also said that they were told that the final decision on the Link Centres will be made on the 9th of February 2024. So there is a consultation. It's only a month long and it ends on the 6th of December. We've already put forward our support for the Link Centres from Torridge External Scrutiny, but we can all do our individual consultation responses as well. Is there anything that you want to add, Councillor Craigie, because you were at the meeting?
Yeah, Annie makes a pretty good summary there of what went on. Obviously, there is a lot of misunderstanding from the county about the difference between prevention of crisis and dealing with crisis. And obviously, there were a lot of questions that we raised about the thing that they've done in Holsworthy, whether they've essentially outsourced it to the voluntary sector, but that they had no regard for the fact that people couldn't access that. So that they made it plain clear that once it's gone to the voluntary sector, they've essentially washed their hands of that sort of prevention of crisis duty, which obviously we feel is going to impact all the blue light services enormously, because once people are in crisis, anything can happen, and often probably strange and unusual things among those. So while the Link Centre service is primarily about supporting people to avoid social care, the complications of mental health mean that that prevention of crisis is quite an important duty, and we're really trying to make sure that the county understands that just because they think it might save a little bit from the social care budget doesn't warrant the huge amount of impact that it has on everyone else's budgets. So I hope that councils, police and so forth will consider that and making any representations that might be appropriate.
Thank you. I might raise it again later in the meeting if that's okay. Thank you. What we've got next. Consideration of the forward plan. I propose we defer that to the next meeting as well. So that leads us on to 8, update on the North Devon and Torridge Community Safety Partnership. Welcome, Toby.
Me?
I can see that it says report by the chair of the North Devon and Torridge Safety community safety partnership.
Okay, good on. Okay, so those that know me, Toby Davies, I'm the local meeting area commander for North and West Devon, but I'm not here today in that capacity. I'm here today because I chair the North Devon and Torridge joint, because we're obviously aligned together, community safety partnership. So I always set that context at the beginning. So just to explain, this is not a police meeting. This is very much a partnership meeting. I don't want any. I know there's an imaginary river tour going down the middle of the room, and I'm only talking like there's no seats on that side, right? Just for anyone that's in. So look, I won't go. I'll try and keep this succinct, and I'm going to be supportive. We've got a lot of colleagues here today. So Torridge District Council colleagues obviously here as well, from both local authorities, North Devon districts as well. I've got my police colleagues, one because I think some are going to get more involved in the community safety partnership over the next year, but equally it's sometimes really useful just to hear some of the issues that are going on because it affects the areas we've got. So we've got the Barnsley Sector Inspector and the North Devon Sector Inspector and my Operational Chief Inspector behind me. And of course, those who don't know, Kevin Connor is our partnership sergeant here as well. So other colleagues I think will probably introduce themselves during the day as well. So just remind everybody what a community safety partnership is. It's not a team. We don't walk out of here and we're all together in an office. It doesn't work that way. We all have our own day jobs. It's about a commitment to work together. So back in the early 2000s, the government recognised that you can't tackle crime and ASB police alone. Most of the things that lead to crime and ASB tend to be the causes that lead people into that needs a partnership response. So they made it a legal requirement that partners work together to try to tackle crime and disorder. And as local authorities, obviously you have a sort of administrative role in bringing that partnership together. And then someone such as myself steps up and takes on the chair role, which I'll come to in a minute, because not a lot, okay? Because it may be a transition coming. So there's a number of partners that were involved in that. I won't go through all of those. You've probably seen that in the report. So it is a legal requirement to come together and work as a partnership, but actually it doesn't need to be a legal requirement because let's be honest, the reality is the right thing to do. Actually, there's some really good examples of when we work together, we're far more likely to lead to sustainable change. So locally, the two districts obviously administrating. So it's technically two different community safety partnerships, hence the separate meeting structures that we've got here today as well. We look to meet 3 or 4 times during the year. And I think I have to probably make reference to the fact, not just for the local authority and police. If you came here last year, only myself and Tim existed. It's been a complete transition. In Torridge, it's a whole new team, and in North Devon District, bar Tim, it's a new team as well. So it has been a bit of transition. There has been a bit of time trying to get up to speed, and I guess the middle part of the year, it was just a bit of time just trying to land things in the new world. But we've all come together the last few months, got a really clear direction, structure, leadership, and governance, and the like as well. So it's looking really good to set ourselves off for the next year as well. And I'm still, from a police perspective, I'm still really keen. I see that the benefits we get out of that partnership work. Hence, Kevin Connor, my partnership sergeant, and Lucy Robinson, who works with Kevin as well, that doesn't exist everywhere else, Devon and Cornwall. That's a commitment we've made because we see that by having people dedicated to that partnership work actually brings us back more in return. So that's something we're committed to maintaining for the next 12 months. So if I go to the reports, some of the stuff in the report, CSP has legal things we have to do. So we have to do domestic homicide reviews, which has been extended. If there was ever, if we ever have a tragic situation where somebody is murdered in a domestic environment, now it includes anyone who's committed suicide on the back of domestic abuse. And they've extended that now to knife crime in any situation as well. We have to do as partnership a review to see if there's any learning that comes off the back of that. That's delivered at county, all the CSPs together come together, and that's delivered at county level. We also have a legal duty around counter-terrorism and prevent. And we have community triggers where ASB is repeated in a particular location. Individuals can trigger it to the community partnership to review. And we also have the anti-slavery, and all of these, we have leads from the CSP that sit on county level groups to come back and try and just ensure that we're delivering as best we can. And at county level, we talked about county a minute ago, but at county level, there is a Safer Devon partnership, which I as chair and some colleagues here as well go to. That as an executive group, but it also has an operational group where the local authority managers sit on that group and ensure that all the CSPs across Devon are working kind of focused on some of the, the obvious things and use some of those economies of scale. So I have at the beginning, as I say again, I'm probably the only, I think I'm the only CSP chair that's police left in the Devon side. It is actually quite unusual. I think the intention was to try to move it from police, to try to make it clear that it's a partnership feel. And the reality is, I've probably alluded to, is that I have for about 2 years been saying I'm going to step down. Caused a bit of confusion because I think, frankly, it might have been your parish council congratulated me on my retirement and asked me my successor. I'm still here. I'm not going. I'm just stepping down from the CSP.
That's why I asked, when are you going?
Yeah, no, thanks, man. No, I'm sorry. You were surprised you saw me, I know, but I'm still here. But yeah, so
I feel a lot safer now.
yeah, thanks. Right. So yeah, it's not, so just remember that, and I'm happy to take questions and I'm happy to take questions in the margin, but this is about the partnership today as opposed to a police meeting. I come to district, give me grief there about police stuff, but look at the partnership aspects today. So in the context, have we got the thing to put on the screen? Have you got the priority? Can we just flick it on the screen? Is that right? So I'll give you a broad context, and you can go into detail if you want. Crime in our area is down last 12 months. It's about 1% less. We're talking about 10,500 crimes have occurred across our area. It's not perfect. I'm not suggesting that because there were always pockets, there were always areas, there were always issues, there was lots of complexity within our patch. But when you consider Devon and Cornwall is one of the safest, it is, I think now, do you say it's the safest now, isn't it? Is it the safest? It's the safest force in the country. And we are the safest area within Devon and Cornwall. So to put the context, crime per head of population, you don't get many areas safer than North Devon. It doesn't always feel that way, depending on who you are, I get that. But the other thing that I guess, and it comes down to that community and partnership support, is that we also have one of the highest outcome rates, particularly around domestic and our more vulnerable crime types. We actually get more of those offenders brought to justice because we have that partnership relationship and we have that community support, which you don't always have in other parts of the country. But it's not just about crime. They always give the analogy as well from policing that only 80% of what we do is not crime related. And the reality is that much of what we do has got nothing to do with crime, but it is having impacts on people's perception of safety. ASB for our area is down 17%. But again, I'm not saying, I don't just come in and say like it's all absolutely, it's rosy and everything else, because there's not. There are pockets and areas and individuals and issues that we still have. But the last 12 months, we have seen some reduction. But in a minute, you're going to hear some really good work from both districts. I'm going to give a little update on some of the work that's going on to tackle some of that as well. So the priorities that sit up there, we removed road safety last year, not because we're not saying it's not important, because it is really important, but we felt that the added value from the CSP wasn't really needed because we had the Vision Zero Southwest. There's a really good partnership response at Devon level. We're doing lots of activity, and we still are doing lots of activity. We just felt it didn't need to sit within the CSP priority. So we removed road safety, and we have serious violence, including violence against women and girls. I'll come to that in a minute. We have safe streets and antisocial behaviour as a second priority. And then we have emerging threats and themes, space, and that's one that we now want to establish as a priority. And that's going to be hate crime, and we'll see what the thoughts are of you as members. The themes, the style in which we're going to do that is still very much about being trauma informed, looking at perhaps our most highest intense users to get into the causes and breaking the cycle. Prevention is a theme, and probably importantly is recognising our morality, because we do end up getting sucked into town centres. I'm not going to deny that, because that's where much of the issues happen. But the reality is we're a massively rural patch. You know, I've got about 160 parishes in my area that I cover, and there is a greater sense of isolation, sometimes of vulnerability felt by a rural community when a crime happens over what happens if it happens in a town centre as well. So I'll just quickly go through to these, but I'm conscious that my district colleagues are going to provide some small updates in their own areas as well. So serious violence, it's a legal duty. The Home Office, the current government brought it in and said, we now want all partners through community safety to deliver against serious violence. Much of it, in honesty, probably focused around the city centres and knife crime and gang culture around some of our national urban conurbations. But there is equal recognition there's a lot of stuff we can do. So we're delivering most of the serious violent element of that through the Safe Level Partnership, because all the CSPs have come together. The county are getting most of the money. We're getting little tiny bits that we're spending locally, but the bulk of it is coming at county level. And through the assessments that they've done, they felt the best way to get the most benefit out of that is to concentrate on youth and early intervention around youngsters and deliver that at county level, which I think makes a lot of sense. For us here locally, we felt what's the most likely way serious violence sort of it impacts on our area, and in my mind, it's going to be behind closed doors. It's going to be the hidden harm. It's going to be the domestic violence and the sexual violence that doesn't happen out on the street, but it's happening in domestic environments. We agree with youth intervention and dangerous drug networks. We're an attractive area for organised crime groups to come down and try and take over the drug supply market. And when they do that, it's not pleasant. It's not nice. These are nasty people and they do some nasty stuff. I'll come to in a minute. So for us locally, it's about raising awareness. It's encouraging people to report. It's about building partnership safeguarding and working with offenders to break the cycle as well of violence. So you can ask me the partnership more questions on it, but we've had bystander training that's been established through the community partnership. We've had community campaigns. We've done healthy relationships in the school environment to encourage obviously our youngsters to understand and avoid, prevent people moving into that direction. Project Night Eye. Have you heard of Project Night Eye, some of you? So Project Night Eye is about evening nighttime economy, and it's about giving police and partners the ability to identify sexual predatory behaviour that's out there. So CCTV operators, police are given some enhanced level of training to spot those people who are probably at risk of going on and committing sexual offences. That's also linked into work that's then happened around the night bus. We heard about the night bus. So that's a partnership initiative around the bus that's going now 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock between Barnsley and Bideford, so that you've got safe route home. Let's be honest, it's quite good for the economy as well, because it's keeping people out. Well, I don't know if it's from a police perspective, but it's keeping people out there, but they're going back in the environment around people, not walking home and put themselves in danger. Ask Angela is another licensing campaign around the licensees. That's about giving licensees the knowledge and understanding about vulnerabilities to look out for, drink spiking, people coming in and saying I feel a bit uncomfortable because someone's been following me. So licensees have been given that training, and obviously on the Barnsley side, obviously the street marshals, I think some nightclubs are putting together and paying the street marshals on the evening nighttime economy time as well. And the other thing on serious violence is, and it's not a big issue at the moment, but it's one of those things you've got to never let your guard down, and that is about county lines, because it was a big issue 2-3 years back. Drugs, let's be honest, it's an issue everywhere, and there are drug dealers everywhere. I'm not going to, and every part of this country, there will be people who are unfortunately addicted, and there will be people who will be supplying. The bit that we really try to look out for are these county lines groups that come in. They will identify very vulnerable users. They will take over their address, and they call it cookering. And they will then basically, they don't tend to be the ones touching the stuff. They will then put these very vulnerable people. They will use violence. They will use sexual violence and some horrific stuff I won't share here. But the best way to tackle that is through information. So if we know and start to spot those people coming in and those addresses, because often you as partners and partnership services are the ones that are going to the addresses. If we spot that early doors, we can then get in and do something about it, and we make this really unattractive. And for the last 2 years, we've made this a really unattractive area. And in partnership intelligence, our intelligence teams say that we are now the highest level for a small area. The highest level of partnership intelligence comes in from Northern Devon. That helps us inform our activity to then target those that are causing these problems. And at the moment, again, as of last year, we have had a couple that tried to come back, but we have no county lines routes that were recognised on our area. So that's the violence from the girls. The second priority is around safer streets and ASB. You know, the reality is this does tend to be lower level crime. It cannot even be crime necessarily. But if you go into any public meeting, I go to any council meeting, what do I generally hear about? It's about the visible stuff. It's about perception safety. It's about that impact it has. If you see this stuff in the town centres, it leaves you with a sense of public confidence and reassurance. And the number of people who say they don't feel safe, never seen a crime, but just don't feel safe because they've seen. So it has to be something that we address at the partnership, not least because it's one of the things that the partnership is best to come together on, because it's not just about the police, because you can't have police there all the time. It's something that if we all work together, we can make a real difference. So you're going to hear a couple of sort of things from both our district about some of the work. So the safe streets we can talk about from Hannah, and I think we can talk about some of the stuff about the public spaces order from Phil in a minute as well. So just to reassure you, and for elected members to be involved on as well, is Kevin here is now chairing the Antisocial Behaviour Steering Group monthly meeting. That is there to identify individuals or locations which are our hotspots. So those repeat individuals, and they look at escalation processes that we can then use to go up for some of that, the lower level stuff, to the point where we can then take more robust action against a location or against an individual. More recently, elected members, because we need that community feel, you need that understanding of being invited. I don't know how that goes out, but if elected members want to be involved in that meeting or there's particular issues on your area, that's the place to go and raise it to see if it meets the threshold to build more activity and response to it as well. But just more broadly, because you're going to hear a lot of this from Hannah in a minute. We have been doing joint patrols, both sides, police, partners going out. I would suggest an outlier. We had a really good update last community partnership meeting from Kate Morn, who is probably one of the lead issuers of community protection notices. Very low threshold, but you can give a notice to somebody, and if they don't comply, then it can ultimately end up in civil action. But 90 people given a notice comply, don't they? So actually it's a really good tool for local authority and police to issue to people. You've got the public space protection orders. I think you've got a really robust licensing regime here, which is good at tackling not just licensing, but taxis or people that we are concerned about. We have had and are initiating ASB house closures, where it's linked to drug supply. The reality is most of the activity, I'll be honest, is concentrated on our town centres. So Ilfracombe Town Centre, Barnsley Town Centre, Bideford Town Centre, Jubilee Square. We have pockets in the suburb of other areas that we address as well. But I'm sure there might be some questions on that in a minute. Marshals, I undoubtedly will come up, and I know there's a difference, because there are marshals on the North Devon district side. They are fantastic. Absolutely fantastic in delivering, reassuring, and preventing that low-level stuff that goes out there. The challenge, and I will come to in a minute, is of course it's about funding, and the funding is not police funding. The police don't fund street marshals. The PC doesn't fund street marshals. If we want it, we've got to find a way to pay for it ultimately, and that's one of the challenges. But it may be a good update. Some aspects of that in a minute. So the last thing, just as a theme, is I talked about trauma-informed, high-intensity users. There is a project that we have, and I've been very much involved in, and the partnership involved in. It's called High Flow, and that is about the partners and predominantly health as well, at the lead. We identify who are the 13 most intense users of our service, the most chaotic, the most complex, often linked to criminality. It can just be around ASB, but equally can be linked to users of other services without any criminality at all. And these people will always just, and you've talked about the link centre, it will be mental health issues, it will link to drug abuse, it will link to alcohol abuse. And we can keep on going through the same cycle, bringing these people in, bring to the courts, get the fine, and it doesn't change stuff. The high flow project is all about saying that let's all come together as partners, identify and agree who those 13, 14, 15 people are. Let's put a team around that person, so they don't have to go to 15 different agencies to talk. And let's have a caseworker that takes them to the appointments, takes them here, takes them there. And I'm not going to give each one, but honestly, I can give you some of the examples. And one day we'd love to bring one of the people that's turned some of the examples where you've turned one or two of those individuals around who have been causing hundreds and hundreds of reports to different agencies, who are now living in safe accommodation, not crossing any of our services. That to me is a real push. And Safe Streets paid and supported more workers around some of that as well. So that's something I'm really, really keen to see that carrying on. So next steps, and I'm looking, because I know there's not going to be questions. Hate crime, I want us to raise the priority. You may or may not agree, but certainly the data suggests it's a growing crime. There's more rhetoric. We've had posters and things delivered around Barnstaple, which it's not illegal, but written first stuff. It starts to make some people feel a bit more uncomfortable about some of the stuff that we're seeing. And we've moved to a general election year. Sometimes the extremes of politics come out and they start saying things. And I know there's nobody here of that nature, but I think it's really important that we work with Sunrise and other groups here locally to try to show how unacceptable. It's often about raising awareness. So we want to raise hate crime because that's a real partnership type stuff. Say zero tolerance. We're all going to confront it as well. Serious violence duty. I talked about it. The money doesn't really come till next year. We're working with Devon, so we want to make sure that North Devon and Torridge get a really fair chunk of that money and what's being spent, and it's not just getting concentrated, as sometimes is our fear, onto the cities, that it gets up towards North Devon and Torridge. For me, I think Safe Streets, general election year, I might be a cynic, but then maybe money might start appearing as we get nearer election year. If the money appears, let's be ready. The reality is, I think Torridge side, I would have thought a Safe Street bid might be a sensible thing to be thinking about very early doors if it came in, because it brings money. When it brings money, it brings sustainability around things that might be delivered. 2 community hubs. We rather tactically took, the chief came up a couple of weeks ago, and we pushed in past the 2 potential estate locations, but I know North End District are looking at a community hub in potentially on Constable and Green Lanes. So we're looking to see whether police and others can perhaps be part of that. And Torridge has got the chief's already commitment that to try to work towards a Jubilee Square. And I know the council, you've been raising that with me. And so I've been trying to tussle with my own estates team around that, if I'm honest, but I think we've got there, and we've got some really positive activity that can take place, and we can then base ourselves into some of these central locations to be really good. And the last thing is just, I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years. The last 3 years I've been saying it's meant to be a 2-year, 10-year, somebody else comes in. It's been a bit of a challenge, in honesty, to try to find the natural successor, but time always comes good, and 2 natural successors have come forward. I think this makes absolute sense, with a co-chair between the local authority reps, Torridge District Council and North Devon District Council. So unless something happens in the next 3 months, we're going through a transition. But Darren here from North Devon District is the environmental health lead, and Phil Gilbert from the Torridge District Council will be taking over. So next time it won't be me sat; I'll be sat on the sidelines watching them the next time that we have this meeting. So I wish them all the best. So I'm going to be very much involved. My team will be very much involved. But still, that's the whole point of the partnership working. But it's great to have. I think sometimes best get the uniform away, stepping in the background sometimes with these things as well. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. So I said it'd be succinct. I wasn't succinct at all, was it? No, not probably not. There goes me. I talk. Right. So I don't know if Lou and that's me finished.
Right.
Do you want to hand across?
Should we say the name of the councillors from our own, because I don't know all your councillors' names, so if someone's hands go up.
Before the question, is it possible to have the, because my presentation was 90%, but we got Phil and Hannah were going to give a little update on their own areas. Is that
Right,
right?
we'll save questions till after then.
Yeah.
Diana.
So Phil goes, you want to go first, Tori?
Yeah, fine, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Toby, thank you, chairs. So it will be a fairly quick update. Toby's covered off quite a lot of stuff, and I've made some notes as he's been speaking as well, so it might be a bit garbled because it's all over the shop now. So just the PSPO, the Public Spaces Protection Order for alcohol and ASB. We've been working very closely with the neighbourhood team, our community safety team. There have been a number of dispersal orders issued there. So I think there's approximately 30 dispersal orders have been issued there, unless anyone knows any different. I'm pretty sure that's the number. That is due for renewal in spring 2024, the PSPO. So we will be obviously going out to consultation on that. And as it says in the reports, one of the things we're thinking of is changing the time frame for the dispersal from 6 hours to 24 hours, which will bring us in with most other Devon authorities. But there may be other things that will be considered as part of that renewal as well. So as Toby mentioned, to help with the PSPO enforcement and general antisocial behaviour, we have been looking at the office space on Jubilee Square as a community hub, and we have very good feeling about that now since the acting chief constable visit. So fingers crossed that that will happen sooner rather than later. And I think the plan is that that will be a jointly branded space as well. So it will be a space for us to go as well as the police. So just go back to Toby's comment just quickly about us working together. This is none more apparent, I think, than when you visit and I know Councillor Craigie, you would like to do this. So we've taken over the running of the CCTV. Recently, it got handed over formally in the last couple of weeks, so that now sits within our service. And the synergies are fantastic there. And if you go to the CCTV centre, you'll see the fabulous work that's going on. It really is good. And it's incredibly closely working with the police. And I think it will benefit us greatly to have that embedded within our service and within the community safety team. It will really strengthen that partnership. So we're very much looking forward to that. Just to say on the Operation Night Light stuff, our CCTV operators have had that training as well. Just another quick update about Toby mentioned some local spend earlier. So yes, we do have a very small amount of money available to us this year, and we are going to be spending that on some street marshals. For Bideford, that will be between Monday the 18th and Sunday the 18th of December and Sunday the 31st. So to cover the Christmas period and New Year period of weekends. So we are going to have some street marshals, some visible people out and about. Another quick one just to mention, domestic violence, Toby mentioned. So a very small update on that. We've got the possibility of leveraging some funding from our housing assistance policy on that one, which will need a small update to the policy. But there's a possibility of doing that. So we're in discussions with Helen Page around that, and that will be to just get some funding in for measures around the home and around safety things. So that's something that's ongoing. I think that's probably all I want to say for the time being. The rest will come out in questions, I'm sure. Thank you.
I think at this stage probably best to if I initiate or Anna speaks, just say as part of the co-chair, Hannah will give you a motivation. I don't want to take that because she's got a lot to say and it's very interesting. So, but I just wanted to thank Toby, if I sort of put that on record, because he's steered this ship for a long time, and I've come from other boroughs and seen our partnerships work in other districts. This one's working really well. I can see the links, and that's probably due to Toby being at the ship end and the sharp end and bringing it together. So I just ought to put on record that give our thanks to him for his support, and Phil and I will continue that good work. To Hannah.
Yes, Colin,
Thank you. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Hannah Harrington. I'm the place manager for town centres at North Devon District Council. And part of that responsibility includes CCTV, and obviously, as part of this, I'm the project manager for Safer Streets bid. So for, again, just kind of a little bit of background. So Safer Streets was a particular funding opportunity that came through from the Home Office. But I think what is really important, what is really, really relevant for today is that it could not have been delivered without a partnership approach. It is actually all about collaboration and working together. So yes, it was a particular opportunity, came with some funding, enabled us to do some fantastic work, which I will talk about. But you know, as a it was absolutely a team and a collaborative approach. And so that is what is really important. And for me going forward, because unfortunately the funding has now come to an end, it is about the legacy that we leave behind from this and making sure that the fantastic results that we have seen and the relationships that we've built through it kind of continue. So just as a little bit of background. So as I say, it was a funding opportunity. It had to be supported. The bids had to be supported by the APCC, but submitted by the local authorities. So we did that for North Devon. And obviously, as with everything, it was evidence and stat based. So Barnstable was the area put forward for this particular round. And I'd say the bid is basically was a series of interventions, which together ultimately were there to improve the feelings of safety for everybody in the town centre. And that was both kind of doing the daytime and nighttime economy. This was round 4, and it was the first time that antisocial behaviour was included as a, it's not quite a crime type, but as a kind of an area that you could tackle through Safer Streets. The previous ones have been very much based around inquisitive crime and violence against women and girls. So ASB was the first time it could be included. So that was kind of gave us an opportunity to try some new interventions. So our bid focused very much around ASB, violence against women and girls, and very much ultimately the perception and the feelings of safety in town. So that's what they were all aiming to do. The bid was broken down into 6 key areas. There's lots of detail in here, so I'm more than happy to take questions. But if I just give the kind of the headlines and then please feel free. So we broke them down into 6 key areas that, as I say, working together to achieve the outcomes. The first one was around strengthening the local environment. So we carried out an environmental visual assessment with the signing out crime colleagues from the police. So that was around some additional CCTV. So we identified 3 areas where we did have a lack of coverage, I guess. So we had 3 additional cameras and also a deployable one. So that enables us to respond when you do get ASB hotspots. So that's great, that kind of linked in. And also looking at lighting. So there were some key areas, particularly on the nighttime economy, linking different parts of our nighttime economy from the bus station kind of routes where people identified that they didn't feel very safe. So for us, if you know Barnstable, that we concentrated on Maiden Street, which is linking the riverfront through to the bus station and other nighttime areas. So we did the CCTV there, but we also improved the lighting quite significantly, and that is now felt a very safe route. The next area was around tackling complex ASB. As you've heard from Toby, it's a complex area of work. There are lots of causes, so it isn't, it needs lots of partners to tackle that one. So as part of that, we did establish the safety town team. You've heard a lot about marshals. They were kind of a key part of that, but I would stress they were only a key part of it. It was very much about working together. So we knew from talking to people and kind of a survey we put out right at the beginning that what would make people feel safer was a visible presence on the high street. Now, initially, I guess people think that's a police presence, but actually when you break it down a little bit further, it's actually just about a kind of a visible uniformed presence. It doesn't have to necessarily be police. And so when we kind of reviewed all the people that work in the town centre from all our different partners, so from the district police and the town council, there's actually a lot of people that work on the ground in the high street. So from the CEOs through to town rangers, in our case, and the street cleaners, and the police and the PCSOs. So it's all of those working together actually give you a fantastic presence in the high street. Fantastic intelligence route. They see what is happening day to day in the town. So the marshals have been brilliant. They really provide that reassurance to people, and businesses and members of the public have really appreciated them. But the one thing for me going forward is, again, it's about those relationships. They all work together. So if it's with ASB, if it's a street attached leaving their duvets and things lying out in the shop doorway, they then liaise with our street cleaners to get those moved. It's those relationships that they have, though, which is really important for me. So we talk a lot about the marshals, but please don't remember everybody else that is involved in that as well. Toby mentioned on high flow, so we did fund an additional high flow worker for the period, again to deal with those with very complex needs. And we use quite often a space, and you've referred to it again this morning around the hubs. Again, that presence is really important. So we use the town council office right at the end of the Panny Market called the Shambles to do lots of joint patrols out of, to hold partnership days, have a presence in, because again, right in the town centre, people could see that we were there and available and accessible. The third area was around youth ASB and tackling youth ASB, and that was about, I guess, tackling those kind of early entrance into the youth justice system. So again, we funded an additional youth intervention worker, worked particularly in the 2 secondary schools, again with kind of small numbers of people, but having, giving that realistic approach to working with them. Next area was around violence against women and girls. So again, this was a whole range of different interventions. They included bystander training in both of the secondary schools, so that went up to kind of over 200 pupils. We did a lot of training around workers in the nighttime economy. So they had bystander training, they had Ask Angela training, they had predatory behaviour training. So we disseminated a lot of training out to people who work in those particular sectors. We did some self-defence training courses up at Petrock, again, particularly with women and girls, and the results of that were amazing. And confidence that people said it gave them. So it seems like a small thing, but actually was brilliant. And again, that was about 60 students at Petrock took part in that one. We did theatre-based activities. So again, some theatre groups came in and did some theatre style workshops with children in the secondary schools. This area was particularly around the nighttime economy. So again, we did some stamp out spiking campaigns. Our licensing team are introducing an accreditation system with the licensed premises. There's a whole massive piece of work around that, but it's about effectively raising the standards in the nighttime economy and the awareness and the training of staff. Lots of work around taxis as well. They did lots of additional safeguarding training and just kind of regulation and general checks. So they spent quite a lot of time doing that. They did some mystery shopper exercises, all of those kind of work that I guess we, would happen anyway, but that we were able just to kind of enhance with some additional funding. Street pastors, we have some additional street pastors as well that work in the nighttime economy. And then the final one was around always kind of working with the community to develop their own solutions and reclaim some public spaces. So similarly, we had some areas identified, so Paternoster Row, if you know that, the kind of the churchyard in the town centre, beautiful, beautiful part of the town, but had perhaps had a reputation of a bit of a no-go area because actually people sat in there drinking and was actually wanting members of the public to use it on their lunchtime. So we set up something called the Community Sparks Fund. It was a sort of £20,000, but really easy, accessible grant funding to groups who put on activities in the town centre and just kind of almost reclaiming that space. So there was lots of activity that took place there that actually just changed the feel of the place. So by having some theatre companies doing, some activity in there, it sort of moved the behaviour out of that area, and it feels like a much nicer space now for people to enjoy. And there were some other fantastic projects we supported from the boxing club through to the Seroptimists doing other kind of anti-spiking activities. So I think there were about 40 different groups and activities that we supported through that relatively small amount of money, but had a massive wide-ranging effect. So that's a really, really speedy run through of kind of all the things did. There was a lot of detail in all of that, and I'm more than happy to take questions. But I think for me, it is all about that learning, about it was none of this any of us could have done on our own. And we have kind of established a fantastic team, fantastic relationships between all of us. We've all worked very closely. Inspector Hannibal can probably give you some statistical data, because he's the stats man, on the kind of the actual impact of the reported crime, which we have seen a significant reduction in. But for me, that really important thing is just kind of ensuring that legacy. And whilst there was some funding, some of the work is very definitely continuing. And for me, is the partnership that's really important, is that we share that learning and we try and find a way to make these activities sustainable.
Right, shall we do our own councillors then, yeah? Okay, councillor Biederman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to quickly, there's a lot. I've had more questions, but I think, first of all, I think it is wonderful to hear about this partnership, because it is, I think I've sat on the council over 12 years and had the luxury of being on licensing for the whole time. And I remember my early days where I really didn't understand the partnership quite a bit. You saw the police and immediately launched into this, what about this, what about that, and all the rest of it. But it is a partnership, and it's incredible really what we do achieve. And I think it's great that we've got such low crime rates and everything else, and it's right that we concentrate on our centres, I think, because ultimately that's what drives the economy of North Devon, isn't it? So, absolutely, if there's new things happening in our own individual communities, we know we're going to get the support of the police. But I think if we get our town centres right, and our coastal centres as well, and that's the bit where I'm coming on to really, I think, the street marshal thing. I mean, I've been in Barnstable twice shopping in the last 2 weeks. I only do it twice a year, but we're getting prepared early this year. And it's quite clear to me that, I was in yesterday, I was in on Friday, and there is a different atmosphere in Barnstable to the one I remember from 12 months ago. I think that's quite a good thing when you go in so infrequently. Apart from maybe I'm in the nighttime economy more than I am the leisure economy, but it definitely is a better feel about it. But where we do have a problem, and I think this is my challenge to the partnership, is our what become our coastal centres in the summer. So, it's probably Westwood, Owen, Torridge, it's Instow, it's Croy, it's Woolacombe, and sorry if I've missed some. And how we can get some of that joined up partnership work going in those centres. We know exactly when it's going to happen. It's sort of, as soon as we get to the end of the exam season. And I want those children going out, enjoying the environment, actually having a good time. So I don't want, I shouldn't say it probably in a public meeting. I've never had a major problem about somebody that's 16 or 17, maybe having a drink. What worries me is when they're doing it on their own, on a beach, they potentially fall asleep, the tide comes in, that sort of stuff. So, if we could find a way to work together to manage some of that, I think it's a challenge. I don't expect an answer now. I just felt there's an opportunity in a partnership where we look at how we can sort of do that sort of stuff. But I think ultimately I thank Toby for all his time as chair, and I'm sorry that Bremerton Parish Council has hired you on. Possibly my fault, because I think I did get all that you want to step down from the partnership. But I think that's my question. But I think most of all, I think there's people behind these teams that do tremendous work as well. And it was great to read the report from the Gazette this morning before I came about some of the tremendous work that our police officers do. And I'll finish, Chair. But I wonder whether, and I've said this so many times, because you're right, Hannah, you identified all those people who are in the town centre. If there's a way that we could actually give them a little bit more flexibility on the powers they've got. So a civil enforcement officer, for instance, can drop a ticket for somebody dropping litter and vice versa, that Andy Jones's team, could actually do a parking ticket, because it does seem madness that we're sending people to Linton, Union, Westwood, and where all the outlying areas, and they go all that way, and all they can actually do is give a parking ticket if they're a CEO. They can, if they're a PCSO, there's only so much they get. We could sort of somehow lobby somebody to give them all a bit more power to be able to act. Because I think there's nothing, I always feel sorry for PCSOs when they turn up in Fremington, because I've, the 55th time this year, had to complain, about parents on the case or residents because of parking, and they turn up and they're very good, they're very polite, but actually what people want to see is slap a ticket, that'll be it, job sorted, forever, the chat.
So
Anyway, that's a long rant, but thank you.
So I should have mentioned that. So actually, that's one of the things that we did do with our team is actually delegate powers to more team members. So the CEOs and the street marshals do have PSPO powers. And that was something that came about in the second, if you imagine, you know, marshals originally came from COVID, kind of marshals. So that was the change, if you like, is that actually now they do have those powers and those delegations, and the same with the CEOs. And I think that, you know, that is really important to look at that. And you know, that's what's given them, I guess, if you like, a little bit more respect in some ways, you know, from just is another level, which is great.
Right, just on there was a gap I felt, possibly from some stuff about a few weeks back as well, where comments made in the licensing committees that when we didn't have that community safety code link necessarily strong. So we've invited the chairs of both licensing committees now to sit on the community partnership, and so we came on, and I think we've put that across the Tories as well, which I think will be really beneficial, because actually licensing is often about community safety around a licensed premise and those that have got a license, you know, taxis and the like as well. So that, I think that'll be a really useful thing, because otherwise we perhaps losing that comms can get lost. And I agree with you. I mean, to be honest, there are things outside, but you've got to get your townships right, because most people, whether you're on Tory or people still going to basketball or Bideford or vice versa, and that's where it's often most visible, isn't it? And you go back not feeling particularly reassured or safe if you're seeing stuff. So if you get those right, you're alluding to, I guess, the issue we have around the coast is exam season, and it can be in Stowe, it can be Croyd, it can be the northern boroughs. The kids will all decide on a particular day and they will go down there. You know, we've all probably been at that age where we might be the kind of people that were going down there ourselves. I've no doubt. In Frank's nodding away, Frank. But but there is work we can do in the school, because what you point out is it's the vulnerability of very young people who perhaps aren't as used to some of the alcohol and other stuff that go down there. So the last couple of years, the weather has been a bit of a killer, really, because it's not been particularly friendly on those days. But we do joint patrols and with local authority, and I think what we need to do this year is line up the dates better with the schools, because it's all different sometimes in different schools on when they all kind of sort of agree. Get the intelligence about what day everyone's going out. Keep it proportionate. We're not going to stop people having fun, but actually about perhaps some messaging on parents. You're going to be there to collect. You know, the type of things that you. So I think it'll be something we put on our radar now for next year, so that we've got a nice joint response to it. It's the social media, isn't it, now, Toby? They can arrange it so much. They really quickly. But whereas in our day, it was literally, you know, word of mouth at school that we still get to know, because it's going to be a copper or a teacher or a counsellor's a parent, aren't they? Or somebody who's doing it. So you tend to know where it's going to happen. But yeah.
Just leading on from, you mentioned the licensing committee where it was raised about recording crimes. Councillor Pennington has asked me to put this forward, so he said I was hoping to ask a question in regard to the difficulties encountered with the 101 call number that has happened.
Wrongful.
The question: how can the public have confidence in the police, stating Torwich has one of the lowest crime rates in the country, when it's so difficult to, one, report a crime, and two, have confidence when the caller does get through, a genuine incident is recorded? So I promise that I'd ask these questions.
Look, just a moment, it is not forum. That is in the police meeting, but again, equally, you might be watching. I don't know, because I know it's on YouTube. This isn't it on there now. So I'm happy to take those questions at district and take it from council direct. But it would be a bit professional not to just give a quick response. Yes, Devon and Cornwall are engaged around our contact. That was identified last year in November, and we're on engaged with the HMIC around how we're managing not just 101 but 999. And the bit you need to get absolutely right is your 999 first, and the data and the information over the last 12 months is a lot better around 999. Is 101 in a better place? Maybe slightly. Is it perfect? No, far from it. There's still work to be done. There's a huge amount of investment that's gone into it. So all I would say, it's a really good balance, because sometimes we put the pressure to get people behind the phones and we can resolve that. But we also know behind here, we need people out there actually going to the jobs that people phone about. So you put them behind the phone, who's going to go to the job as well? So there's a balance to be struck. However, there are so many ways to report. Online reporting, are you reporting to the right agency? Because most of the calls we get in, I think 25% are actually nothing to do with the police. So they're getting signposted off. If you know who to call the right people first as well. Police surgeries, if you go online, you can see when police officers and sometimes with partners, with our community hubs, when are we all going to be together, or when we'll be present, go and report it there. Front offices, we've got obviously new front offices that are opening up, have opened up as well. So there's other ways of reporting it. But so I have answered it, but because you did give me a heads up that might come up. But that is very much, just be aware, that's a police only meeting. This is about the partnership. So yeah.
Councillor Harden?
Yeah, I think it's great. I've been involved with, the scrutiny and licensing, and the partnership is so important. And I was just wondering, with the news on all the time with the knife crime and that, what's happening socially, how are you going to deal with it? And, is it getting more relevant in our area? And what can the partnership do to keep it under control?
Yeah, I think Andy has something for the data. Look, the reality is that we're not the same as some parts of the country where it's unfortunately almost culturally acceptable to walk around with a knife. You've got gangs, you've got youth gangs, you've got drug gangs, you've just got every gang. So that serious violence duty that I talked about, the legal duty, that is clearly predominantly about trying to address some of those high-end harm, but it's also saying it's not just confined to the cities, it's also confined to the rurality. There are people in our patch there are youngsters, there are criminals who still carry offensive weapons, there's still people out there who carry knives. So we said that serious violence duty we talked about, there's a huge amount of activity. It's going to be predominantly focused on youth intervention. It will probably likely be through schools. It will likely be through those youngsters that we're starting to see that are moving into that level of criminality. It's about those youngsters living in an environment, in a home environment where it is more likely to see somebody coming out. So early intervention is probably key. That said, it's also about all of us having that youth counsellors, partner agency. If we know, because it tends to be those that carry a knife tend to want people to know they're carrying a knife as well. It's intelligence. So if you know or people know of anybody who's carrying a knife, that intelligence informs all of us to then go to the intervention, or we can stop, search, and go red.
So I was going to add, if I may, is so you may have seen recently that there was a Offceptor, which was a police-run initiative, which specifically targeted knife crime or those who may be all based around intelligence information. And secondly, on a 2-weekly basis, there are meetings which happen at a sector level, which invite partners in where information and intelligence is shared about particular issues. And certainly, knife crime would come up into that forum, and then that goes to a meeting which I chair, which then looks at what additional force resources, just from a policing perspective, but it's also in a partnership context, about actually if there are individuals who are causing us concern, how do we target what is a limited resource, actually focus on those who are potentially going to cause the most harm to the community. So that's the kind of loop that comes round, and then we have these surges in terms of what sector, where we look at targeting those particular individuals where intelligence suggests they may be carrying a knife or particular areas and sweeps and things like that.
I say there were risk areas, and both local authorities, the TCTV, the operators behind that, the town centres in Bideford, they know their stuff, and they know the risk individuals, and the number of times where they've spotted something or an individual, and then we've then been able to follow those individuals back to a situation to then to deal with arrest as required is fairly common as well. So some good work there.
I think County Inspector Andy Ward wanted to say something a few minutes ago, didn't you, about the previous item?
Well, I was just introduced earlier as a dubious sort of honorary thing data guy, wasn't I? So pleased to be the same might not be said in reverse. Well, just really to speak about that, it was something I was going to mention was 101 reporting. Because the minute you give anyone reported data, it is only reported crime, or is it reported crime? I'll be looking at it. It's a timely question to ask because only today in Devon Live there was a particular article in which the PCC addresses 101 reporting, and I previously had the privilege and also the challenge of running the contact centre at headquarters, so I know a reasonable amount of background of it. But it was a couple of things that really stood out to me. So abandoned calls to 101 have reduced by around 40% since the introduction of the callback service. So what we can see from that is 4 out of every 10 calls, which previously might have been dropped, will now be answered. And that is a relatively large, that's a large number, force wide, is what I can say to you without having access to that data. So what I'm saying is, what we should be brought out in this data, I would suggest, is that actually we're recording more crime and incidents than we were 12 months ago, which is what makes it particularly interesting when you turn to what the data says. So overall incident report being recorded across the force have fallen, across the force have fallen, and in our area they've fallen 3.7%. That's everything. That's road traffic collisions, etc., etc. So 3.7 down. But if you turn that to antisocial behaviour, so those are incident reports whereby the call taker has clicked the filter to say that is an antisocial behaviour incident, they're down 17.3%. And if I decide to paint us in a better light by not just looking over the last year's period compared to the year before, as referred to in that data, but if I just go for the last 3 months, it's 18.1% down. And for example, in our town centre in Barnstaple, 32.7%, and I do commend Hannah for work as a partnership effort as to the considerable amount of work that she puts in bringing that safe strict bid together, and I echo the success of that. Our crime recorded data is still subject to some sort of statistical inaccuracy due to a change of system, but what we can say is that overall year on year that's fallen 2.2%. And with all of that, what's important to say is, well, is it going down everywhere? Well, it's not. So I've just counted down the list and said that I've looked at different neighbourhoods. So if you take Barnstaple Town Centre and compare that to everywhere else, there are at least 17 areas across the force where the overall number of antisocial behaviour incidents have gone up 20% or more. So the point I'm really trying to make is there are some challenges around recording. One of them is a really significant amount of demand, which is difficult to keep pace with for our contact centres. But what I would say is what that doesn't do clearly is explain the areas in which we have improvements through a lack of reporting. So that's my response to that question.
I'll take a question for Councillor Maskell next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the work you're doing, and also to Councillor Wiedemann for raising the issue around coastal areas. Something that I find in the summer we do suffer with in my patch. My question would be about the night buses. It's brilliant, but it would be really good if we could also have night buses going the other way through Braunton and to Ilfracombe. I think there's a large amount of young people who get stranded. My kids have at times, and it's really difficult for them to get home. I know obviously it's about money, but any hope in the future would be brilliant.
It is about money. Are you big on that? Not do you big part of that? Not. No.
I've been part of it, right?
But,
It's a trial at the moment, and I think everybody would like to see it expanded, but it will come.
I did get a call on the way out by Paul Butler, the licence officer, who just there's been about 600 passengers gone on the bus between Barnstaple and Bid. It's taken up really well. It's relatively cheap, it's only a couple of quid as well. The deterrent is people are not paying 40 quid for a taxi, and then they make the decisions. They get into an unlicensed taxi, they drink drive, or other. So there's loads of stuff, and then or walk home, which is even, it can be even worse. So my understanding is the intention is to try to expand it, to try to get someone for it because of the success of it going to Bideford, to get it to go to Ilfracombe as well. Now I don't know how far advanced that is, and I'm assuming that you're talking about that there, but I want to go back and say that clearly there is a desire from councillors as well to see that be expanded. The reality is going to be how do we sustain it going on. This is actually using partnership funding I would argue there is a massive advantage to the trade of Barnstaple or Bideford in having these buses on, because of course it's going to keep people in the town centre at those times and encourage people to perhaps partake in, you know, in the hostelries that are there. So I think there's something about how we sustain going on. So who's going to pay for that? So I don't know what the answer is. It's just a Christmas lead-up campaign. So none of you involved. Are you involved with that,
Right.
No.
Not directly, but I think the part of the plan really is giving Stagecoach an understanding of how viable it is as a business model, in terms of sustaining that service themselves based on the foreseeable passenger numbers. But clearly, I suppose, as that evaluation moves forward, if that becomes something that can't stand on its own two legs, then there's opportunities there to bring that to where it needs to be with Stagecoach. And I suppose that those discussions are the same way they have with us.
We're using it as a serious violence fund. So the serious violence stuff there, and some of this will on the back of, you know, we've had people walking home about the horrific stuff last year with the two offenders in custody, and they're now on a long remand, but in prison. But it was to try to encourage people to find safe routes. But I would love to find a way, we all find a way which will sustain it.
On that, I was on Torridge, we've recently got in touch with Stagecoach to invite them into external scrutiny, and we're putting questions to them, so we could raise that. I think that'd be a good one to raise about the night bus, and whether they could extend it to Torrington as well.
Thank you, Chair. District and Town Councillor from Westford Ho. We had PC Dan Clenter come to visit the Town Council and talk to us about CCTV at the request of a local parish councillor. He's a local businessman, has suffered quite a lot, as a lot of the shopkeepers have in Westford Ho during the summer of antisocial behaviour and vandalism. I know it's well known. When we had the street marshals a few years ago, it worked really well. But I just wondered what the views were about CCTV. I know it's an enormous cost, ongoing, not just the installation, capital costs, but monitoring. But he's asked about CCTV and whether this would be possible in Westford Ho. There's a lot of people who don't want it, I should add. Thank you.
I love CCTV. I love CCTV, and wherever it is, I think it's a superb deterrent. But ultimately, I'm looking at my Tories colleagues, it does come down to money. But equally, all I would say is that it's once you can find the capital to get the camera, you've got the people that are monitoring the camera. So it's about finding that capital to get the camera in. And if people know the CCTV is there, it gets around. I accept there's always going to be blind spots over that, but it does make a difference. So I guess the question is probably more towards your local authority colleagues and equally as you as members, because you've got to find a way. How do you then find the way to find the funding to do it? Now, it might be you're lucky, Safe Streets comes along another bit because you've expanded the cameras to do the back of Safe Streets. But sometimes it is about being clever about what's out there, see if there's any funding that could be sought to try and do it. But you'd have our absolute blessing on it, because it's superb.
Thank you.
I think I'm right in saying, I assume your CCTV control room storage works the same way as it does in Barnstaple, but deployable. If you could have one installed on a lamp post, which DCC are quite helpful with, I understand, it's about £5,000 a pop.
Yeah, so it's just worth saying it does boil down to funding at the end of the day, and certainly, as you say, the Safer Streets is a route into that for us, potential route into that for us. So that would be something we would certainly look at as part of a bid. Is the viability of CCTV, because as Toby says, once we, it's the cost of the setup, the initial setup. We've already got people monitoring it and doing an excellent job as it happens. So yeah, I think it's just looking at those opportunities for funding.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, where are we at with the bids then? What are the time frames?
There isn't an open bid at the moment, so it'll be the next round whenever that comes.
So we have no idea when that is.
No, I can say, by the way, Safe Street maybe no, that's probably one example, because Safe Street actually has to be confined to a neighbourhood, so it probably wouldn't be Westford Home, it might be Bideford, but there's always things that pop along, but equally it's about trying to perhaps redistribute what you've got as well. And I was thinking about, actually, do you want to put money there, or would you rather see money going to community safety? And I know what obviously advocate, that's probably because I'm wearing a uniform and that's my business, isn't it? I would say, West Lothian, good evening, that from a police and partnership, we have an operation called Operation Loki. You tapped my shoulder on that, didn't you, a minute ago?
Well, it was just to say, Councillor Beedham, I don't know. It's gone now. But just the point about the coastal communities and actually the influx of people that we get in, and actually the communities that live there outside of those times of when we get the tourism. So we ran an Operation Loki. Some of you may have heard of that last year. And I've got the two of the sector inspectors here, and obviously Ewan from Torreside, where actually we put that they came together and supported each other in terms of allocating resources at specific times in specific places. So, for example, at Westwood Ho, that over the summer there was I would go to my stats man, but there was a noticeable decrease in antisocial behaviour in terms of Westwood Ho. What we did see was that was displaced slightly. There was a slight increase in Bidford Town Centre. So whilst we focused on Westwood Ho and did that, actually we need to be careful. And this is where the partnership approach comes in, because it's not just about what we would call pursue in terms of actually the prosecution, but actually about prevention. It's about all those other initiatives that are in place through the local schools, through the partnership approach in terms of actually stopping it in the first place. But that was then repeated at Woolwich, where we targeted certain times of day where people were coming off the beach, for example, at Woolwich, so that presence and actually there was that visible presence there in terms of that. So and that is part of our now cycle of initiatives and cycle of actually where we will support those communities, particularly when it's in those busier months during the summer.
I just wanted to say as well, thank you to Toby for chairing the Community Safety Partnership so well for so long. And also extend my thanks for, I'm sure Councillor Hunkin will say the same about, allowing us to be on that committee now. Also, our committee here is often referred to as the licensing committee, and it has been traditionally very licensing heavy. But we've taken a move for the last few months just to increase, because it's actually the licensing and community safety committee. So we have, obviously brought Tim Birtwistle on board to report more frequently to the committee on various different police and crime type meetings that are going on around, the area. So thank you very much indeed for that, because we didn't currently have any licensing committee members who were on that partnership. So that brings the two together perfectly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Can.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just stand up. First of all, thank you, Toby, and thank you, Hannah, for the presentation, and also all involved with the partnership. I'm a bit different than Councillor Beedham, when I am in the town quite often, which Hannah knows, and in a year it definitely has had a different feel to it. And I can honestly say that from experience. And I do believe that a lot of it, obviously there's other agencies involved, but I think the presence of the street marshals definitely made a difference. And I think that, without them and their presence, it might slip back again. So I think really, I'd like to say if we can, find the funding to keep that going, I think that bit of it works. But also another point I'd like to make is I was at the last meeting, and I know I was very vocal about gaps appearing in youth provision. And I see that obviously that's been picked up, and I'm really pleased that that's been taken a bit further, and you've got obviously somebody working with young people, and that it's been looked into, because I had serious concerns that, as I said, youth provision, there were gaps forming, and that, I did have a concern. But thank you for all your hard work, and thank you, Hannah, for that presentation. Brilliant.
Thank you. I would only say we're plugging some of that gaps in that youth provision and working with those, but that doesn't stop, county colleagues ensuring that we have really good youth club presence, facilities and the like as well. That's going to, you need, the kids need to have something,
Yeah,
to be doing, don't they? And actually those clubs, those of Skate Malton, some really good stuff in the sort of rural towns, bringing people in, hundreds of kids, all involved, engaged, you know, they're doing that. They're not going to be just sort of congregating in an area where perhaps it might occasionally lead on the edges of some mischief as well. So I'd be keen, because budget constraints means that you sometimes see some of those other things that have such a massive impact. And you mentioned mental health early on, didn't you, as well? But yeah.
I mean, I think we're relying a lot on the voluntary sector and, you know,
Yeah.
that doesn't always fit the
No.
gap as much as, you know, local government does. And that's the bit I think that's slipping, and the voluntary sector are struggling to hold that up. So whatever we can do, I think it's, you know, it's very preventative if we can work with young people.
And leading on from what you said there about mental health, I did say I'd go back to looking at that again, specifically the link centres. I raised it at the Torrington Area Advisory Group where we had Ewan Sear, and he was talking about one of the biggest challenges to the police force being mental health in Torridge. And obviously we've heard there's this lack of alternatives to the link centres which are proposing to be closed. This is Bidford, Barnstaple and Ilfracombe. You talked about the county level Safe for Devon partnership, which you attend, Toby. So I was wondering whether you could raise that there, the closures there. And I also thought about the Devon Suicide Prevention Strategic Group. Devon has adopted the Preventing Suicide in England national strategy. And obviously there's very close links between the provision of mental health services and suicide rates. I know Councillor Craig, you're the stats man on but on a serious note, this is really going to have an impact if Devon County go ahead with these closures. We don't believe, and we've scrutinised different agencies in the past few months, we don't believe there are the appropriate alternative provision for our residents in Torridge. I'm pretty sure it's similar across the in North Devon. So we would like to see support from all of the different agencies to keep the link centres open, because we think it would be really detrimental, and we think it's short-sighted, and the knock-on effects are going to be quite severe, and obviously that will affect the police. And also the right person, right care was mentioned.
Yeah.
We had an inspector come to that meeting, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, it's ultimately, I think, because I think questions have been asked previously about whether we as a partnership write here. Well, county are actually technically part of this partnership, so it may have different views. We wouldn't, so I can't really write the partnership, but each agency can respond back to that consultation. We've given Ewan the freedom to write, and he'll write, trust me. You'll see our inspector will offer his views up. I kind of, you know, I obviously agree. Mental health is a massive, it's a huge part of our demand, but equally, if you're addressing that, not only doing the right thing for people, but actually it's also having a really positive knock-on effect for us. And if it's, as you read a little earlier, prevention as opposed to reacting to people in crisis, and we react to people in crisis every day, probably, you know, possibly doing it right now. Officers are out there dealing with those individuals. So it is a big issue for us, and I don't think all partners yet down here have understood, as you alluded to, right care, right place. We are about to, the police are about to say, we ain't taking the call. That's not a police matter. We're not taking, so most of the country has started to move that way. Met have just suddenly said 2 months ago they've done it. They're going to say, we're not going. So somebody else needs to go, and that space is going to be held by health colleagues predominantly, if I'm honest, but equally county colleagues and others as well. So there is a need. So I think your message or these agencies represented here to make sure they're up that consultation and making that noise. And it sounds to me like you've been doing that from the local authority district level. We are doing that as well, but that's only encouraging
It's quite a short time frame. We've only got until the 6th of December.
I'm going to test now to check that because I think we had it before. I'm a bit confused about it. We did it a few months back. I didn't know it didn't meet. Right, so I didn't know if he's coming back new, so what I'll do is we'll go back.
You can follow up and check.
We've heard that about, we'll make sure that we certainly responded first time I saw the stuff being presented. You did, did?
First, several months ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, okay, so we'll make
So
sure.
it might be worth putting in another one, because it's a new consultation.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, well, just to clarify, the new consultation started on the 7th of November, so it's, they tweaked, the consultation slightly, by slightly changing some of the statistics and information in it. They do say that they will obviously, respect all the information that was submitted to the previous consultation, but obviously because their reasoning has changed, obviously.
We probably weren't clear about the right place, so actually,
Yeah.
I will check to see, because you and Matt done this, I haven't asked him, I didn't know it was coming out, so I didn't ask him, but he may have responded already from the Torridge side, but we'll check, to make sure the police voice is being heard.
Brilliant, thank you. Councillor Creed?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, actually, I was chairing, Torridge's, social, procurement policy yesterday.
Those what, sorry?
The social, social value, policy, so in the procurement. And one of the, things is the reduction of crime. So the idea, obviously, within the social value procurement is that contracts of a certain value provide social value. And I was just interested to see within the national themes that they've got the reduction of crime. So will this partnership be able to sort of give any guidance on what those sort of activities might be from organisations that are wanting to say use that as a social value element of their tender?
Sorry, is it coming with money or not? Is it about people? I don't know what that means, social value.
Well, so the social value side of the procurement is that Torridge will have a requirement that 10% of the value of a contract over 50,000.
Oh, okay.
Will have to be will have to provide a form of social value. But one of the measures of that social value is the amount that company provides in, donations of equipment, materials, other things, their volunteer time from their staff and so forth. But one of the themes was reduction of crime. And I wondered if there would be any sort of ability to give them some ideas of what that might be.
You just heard loads there. You've got obviously the three Torridge District Council colleagues sat there, and we after with the police rep Long Kev as well. We give you loads of ideas. We just talked about Westwood Homes and the CCTV to street marshals. So there is loads of stuff you could consider that would link back to reduction in crime and ASB, and probably hit loads of other bits that I'm sure you've got to measure off. But I think that's the kind of thing where with the kind of opportunity for funding, isn't it, that we need to explore and find ways of it. So because the new faces to me, not that new now, but the new faces in the last 12 months. But to hear your local authorities.
I think it might be something for North Devon colleagues to look at when they go through their social.
I've seen that in another authority, and where it's good hits those are things like IT procurement. Because CCTV is a really good capture normally for those sort of things, and that is things that those companies will offer up because it's easy for them. It doesn't really cost them that much money, so it is quite a useful thing to get into those things.
I've not heard of it, so
yes.
Hannah, you wanted to say something, didn't you?
So yes, so actually in the recent large contract, we've done exactly that. So it probably wasn't badged as reducing crime, but what they did was lots of public realm improvements and some lighting improvements. So actually achieved the same thing. So we have done that recently through a large contract. I was just going to respond to Councillor Can. So outside of this area of work, really, but we are doing lots of work at the moment with the Devon County Council colleagues and the youth services and the town council as well through their community developments, setting up a new youth network, as you're aware. So we're trying to bring all those people together. And a colleague of mine, their current development, is working very closely with the library, DCC, looking at all those services. So it absolutely hasn't been forgotten. Just wanted to reassure you, really.
I just did Councillor Hackett.
Yeah, thank you. Toby, the work the CSP has done is, I think, undervalued by the Police and Crime Panel and the Commissioner, Alison Hernandez. I've been banging on to the panel and the commissioner for probably 18 months about street marshals, particularly in the Binford area. And she stated at a recent panel meeting that she did not see value in street marshals apart from one particular area in South Devon, which was highly urbanised. And I think we need to shout out what has been said today, because she doesn't get it. It's as simple as that. If she did, we'd have the money and we wouldn't be having this continual cap in hand going to the police and crime panel. So there are a number of issues I think she needs to be made aware of. I know that Bideford Town Council have been asking since July for a meeting. She hasn't responded. I raised it at the police and crime panel. We need to invite her up here and to better understand what is going on in Northern Devon, both Torridge and North Devon. There are so many issues here. The closing of the link centres I raised at the police and crime panel, she didn't understand the relevance of it. And when I hear that the police are backing away from answering calls for mental health issues, shall we say, it's leaving a void and people will fall over the abyss and we get some tragic results. Additionally, I've got concerns in a rural community that I represent of Broadheath, where rural drink driving seems to be going on unabated, and there are issues there. And I know the police have got their own issues, and one of your colleagues described the problems with 101 and going out and doing the job, and they likened it to working in a restaurant. You either have the waiters, if you like, answering the 101 service, and that contingent being made stronger, or you have the actual people in the kitchens doing the job and going out on the actual call outs. If you take the people out the kitchens, you've got a fantastic waiter service, but you haven't got anybody out doing the job. Or do you have people going out doing the job and attending the incidents, but you haven't got the resources to answer the phones? And there has to be a balance there. Now, one of the issues that keeps getting raised to me is the place of safety, and we don't have a place of safety, APOS, in Northern Devon. And again, I see your colleagues nodding at this, and again, the commissioner doesn't get it. Now, we have a precept meeting coming up for the police and crime panel next February time. The commissioner wants to put out a document within the precept that goes out to all our councillors, to all our constituents across Northern Devon, saying what the police do and where the money goes. I think we need to forget doing that and have something out from the Community Safety Partnership saying, this is the job we do, this is how to get in contact to our individual agencies, and to have a better understanding for the public of when they should be phoning 999, when 101, when they need to get medical people involved for situations rather than the police, and have the appropriate contact information to get hold of their local agencies, be it the local police in Holsworthy, Bideford, Barnstable, wherever. What tends to happen is people tend to put the information they get in the bin because they don't see the relevance of it. If they saw something more relevant, they would get the message. And getting this information out to schools. I don't know if the police still go out to schools regularly.
Well, in terms of regularly, no, we go out to schools, we're still youth engagement officers, youth attention, more targeted, if I'm honest, and yeah.
But I think it's so vital that we get this public interest transferred through the partnership to the Police and Crime Commissioner and invite her down and get the message of what a rural community looks like from our perspective, because clearly, thus far, it ain't been working. And only at the last meeting, I really had a good rub with the team, with the person that chairs it and the commissioner to some extent, to get the acting chief constable attending the police and crime panel meetings. Yes, we're there to scrutinise the police and crime commissioner and her priorities, but if we don't have the chief constable listing like he used to, it's falling on deaf ears. So there are various statements there, but I think it shows a bit of a way forward.
Oh, yeah, Bill, I mean, obviously, you know, I'm thanking because you raised community safety. Of course, you've been a massive advocate for that already. You've been on the community safety partnership for the Torridge Slide lead for some time as well. So you're part of that.
Yeah.
Any of the success that we've had. What I would say is that the acting chief constable had deliberately and directly came to Torridge and to meet you as community lead and police crime prevention panel lead, was it not so a few weeks back as well, off the back of some of the commentary that you talked about. I would say, look, yeah, I'm not here to speak on behalf of PCC because they're not here to represent themselves. I would say, in fairness, she covers the whole force. Everybody wants resource and to their own areas and has compelling reasons behind it. I would say that she, in my experience, has been a really good advocate for Northern Devon in terms of actually the work that's going on and actually and how the partnership works and in trying to provide support. I think that I would be very surprised if she's saying street marshals are not a good thing. I think what she would be saying is, she said it's not for her to pay. She said it's not, street marshals are to sit outside of policing. So I'll come back to the place of safety again. Equally, I guess the piece of not going to get it. I think my colleagues will probably nodding away like that Churchill dog, I'm sure. But the reality, absolutely, and we make that noise that you know, I have officers. There will be probably double crews because they have to be taking somebody to a place of safety out of the area. There were lots of promises made about what would happen when they close the place of safety down up here. That haven't always materialised. It has a big impact on this area, and yeah, but it's a really, it's the mental health, the health, and all that. It's a really complex. We got a meeting actually in the next few weeks with leads of the hospital, mental health, police to try and iron out a lot of operational issues. But I love it. But again, the PCC would say she might advocate for the need for it, but it's not. She can't provide the solution. It's nothing to do with that's for health colleagues and Devon Partnership Trust to come into. But your last point was drink drive. And you just so there is a recognition. You know, we do concentrate on the areas with the highest risk and the highest harm and from the volume, but there is a rural drink drive campaign running in the Christmas called Off Limit, and that's been, I think, off some of the noises that you've made for the partnership and others have made as well from rural communities. Say actually, it's some of our most rural communities where you're having some of the most significant problems, and actually we've had a number of significant road traffic collisions off the back of people who are clearly just completely ignored. And taking no sort of sensible decisions around driving home. So that's running right now. And that is concentrating on rurality at Torridge, rurality at Mexmoor, rurality around North Devon and around that will be going on throughout the summer. And the licensing officer for Butler is going to every rural pub and telling every rural pub licensee, you might want to send a message, we're going to be out there and we're going to be stopping people. And so people might want to have data plans to make sure they can get home back end of a night out. So that bit is gone. That's some of the noises that you've been making. So I did see your hand up, I think.
Yeah,
three marshals.
Yeah, I'd like to see the stats on the stoppages for rural drink driving.
I guess we'll get filmed it, but we'll get that.
Yeah,
Stats man's here.
Stats man's here. We'd like to see the. Yeah, I hear what you say about the police and crime commissioning getting the issue about street marshals, but if we haven't got them here, we haven't been making enough noise because the proof of the pudding's in the eating. And when we haven't got the funding for that, and she's looking to do her priorities for funding for the next year, clearly we need to ratchet up street.
But here's a pushback, is I guess, is that there isn't. I get that, but actually, how then do? Because you have a budget as a district. if you see that as a priority, and I clearly I'm going to, you wouldn't expect anything less, would you?
Yeah.
From it, the PCC will say she's not funding any. The only street marshals that funded to the PCC was that kind of the same as you had, the COVID stuff. So it was a separate thing, and the money came out on separate. That's gone, and it's around areas trying to find. Now, North Devon District have extended street marshals out of their own budget. I've made a commitment which is the loosest commitment in the world, in that we will look to try and work together, find out, is there some way we can find the money? It's not coming from police or PCT. Can we find a way in which we can sustain funding? I think the same for Torridge. It's a different question. If it's that important, and I think it is, going back to Torridge District Council and to your chief exec and start to say, actually, can we play around with this or be clever about how we find some money to fund it? I think if you had street marshals in Bedford Town Centre that could extend out to Westford Bow in the seasonal time, it would be, and you know that, because those of you, I don't know if colleagues know, when they were there, it makes such a difference. So actually, we know it's a difference. Let's prove it, and then go and let's find a way. We're going to have to. It's not going to come from the PCC. They're unequivocally clear. She did it here. With our constraints on our budgets, we're building police officer numbers, but because we have to, and you get fined and financial penalties for doing so. We're paring back on police staff. There's absolutely no chance of it coming from, and I suggest in the next 12 months from police budgets. It's just the PC budget.
I'm gonna bring in our chief executive, Ken Miles now.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, it's on that street marshal's point, and it's probably repeating what Toby's just said, because when the street marshal started in North Devon, I was a bit reluctant, I guess, to support it, because, and Toby and I have had this conversation, because I felt that what we were going to end up doing was funding our own private police force effectively in the town centre. But the results of it, I think, have been startling. And to answer the point about funding, I am now a firm believer, always have been a firm believer, that district councils are the curators of place. You can't curate your place, your towns or your rural areas or anything, unless you've got the goodwill of the community and the community is feeling good about the place. That's the cornerstone of curating the place. And the street marshals have certainly had that impact on people within Barnstable. And I think, going back to Toby's point about priorities, it is a question of district council priorities. And I've had to be sort of dragged to that conclusion myself, because I didn't want to end up funding street marshals. But having seen the benefit of street marshals, I'm firmly of the view that if the district council doesn't do it, then it's not going to happen. And one thing I don't want to happen is for Barnstable to take a step backwards now, to the point where people are afraid to come into the town or aren't feeling safe in the town. The benefits are clear for us, and I'm quite clear that we will continue, as long as we can, we will continue to support it financially.
The problem I would raise for Torridge is, well, you know, the overspend we had last year. How do we budget for something when our resources are cut that thin? You know, what has to go to allow this to happen? And that's what the members are going to have to decide if you follow that train of thought. And make no mistake, the street marshals are there to do a policing role.
No, they're not. No, they're not. Absolutely not. That's the whole point. Is that you as a local authority, and obviously you represent as well. We all have a responsibility around community safety, and actually much of what they're doing it wouldn't necessarily involve any call to the police. We wouldn't even take the call. Yeah. They're dealing with some of the answers, the homelessness, the street drinking. In fact, they got involved in a lot of health as well. It is about, actually, as Ken alluded to, it's about community. It is very, very much a space I think the local authority could fill and deliver something really meaningful back. It's not, they're not. The PCSOs, the team, we've actually increased the teams across both sides. And there's been a commitment, I would suggest, to increase neighbourhood policing than Devon and Cornwall over the next 12 months as well. That's likely to happen. That's only going to enhance the work. It's not as instead of, but what I'm going to be really realistic about is you can't have police officers, the numbers that were there, most of the stuff we're dealing with is hidden harm. It's stuff you don't see day in, day out. They're dealing with that stuff there to retain the presence in the town centre. And what I find particularly powerful in Barnstable is when we went round to the shopkeepers, they just knew that on their little internet, what do you call it, those radios, they just knew that those street marshals were there 9 to 5 every other week, and then they could quickly respond. And it just meant that those people, and equally that's became the issue with those that caused the ASB. They would disappear off. Look at those figures. 35-37%.
If I could just clarify what I meant, I'm of a certain age and vintage, when I can remember you had beat bobbies going out and just engaging with the public. And I know the policing has moved in a different direction, but it's that community feel of having the policeman on. And
I still want that. We still want that, but that should be enhanced with the work we're all doing. So actually, I think the point is, I think the really difficult question for the elected members here on Tory Stock back is, can you convince your colleagues to say this is something we want to prioritise? I would be advocating, you would advocate for it, because actually there's a will, there's a way. And if you look at the budget and play with it, and it doesn't have to be necessarily every day. And I think, aren't you going to be using street marshals in the year's Christmas anyway?
Yes, we are. And I think just to come in on this, it's important to say, as Hannah said, we're going to be taking the learning from what North Devon have done, the experiences of North Devon, sorry. So we will be looking at that across the board. Now, that isn't making any promises, because obviously, the financial situation is the financial situation. But we will certainly look at that. And if there are ways we can see that we can improve things within financial constraints, then we will seek to do so. So I think, it's about working again as the partnership, but taking that learning and saying, right, which bits of this can we pick off and improve matters.
What I don't know, if I could say really quickly, the economic benefits, I don't know, it'd be difficult. The benefits that return not just to local authority, but to the town centres, to the people coming back in. And I don't know how, because there's clearly going to be, you have the street marshals there as well. It's going to make those areas feel more attractive and comfortable, and people come in and spend money, isn't it, as well? So that there is a return. So
I've got Ken again, sorry.
Yeah. This is suspicious because Toby and I seem to be on the same.
Usually it happens, isn't it?
I was going to say exactly the same. It's not for me as Chief Executive of North Devon to preach to Tories what to do, because otherwise Steve's going to be on the phone to me saying, but what I can say is that, we see the benefit in financial terms as much as community terms. So, the toilets in North Devon, in that market car park will continually be in vandalised. Having the street marshals there prevents some of that. So there's a direct financial benefit for us as a district council. But not only that, but when part of our consideration was the fact that we've got the Future High Streets project. You guys have got, your Appledore project. We've got the levelling up funding for for Future High Street. What is the point of us chucking millions of pounds into the town centre to improve the town centre if our local communities don't feel the need or don't feel that they can come into the town centre and feel safe? So it's part of that. And as Toby said, the financial benefits are there. You can, there's the softer financial benefits, how much the local businesses make out of it, more residents coming in, but there's also the financial benefit, hard financial benefit to the district council as well. And it's not an easy decision, I appreciate that. And district councils are all in the same position of having to, beg from here to apply it over here. We're in no different position to Torridge's, but at this stage, and it might change in the future, who knows, but at this stage, I think that the marshals are of such benefit to the town centre that it's really difficult to see how we could remove them. And we're experimenting at the moment by, using them in Ilfracombe to see what impact that has as well.
It just shows you how times have changed, because what you have just said was the idea of the Duke of Wellington to Robert Peel set up the police force under his administration that's what policing was all about.
Well, we're in local government long enough.
Just one thing, I think we're coming to the end. It was raised at a previous meeting quite a long time ago, about the bite-sized training that councillors used to get from the police. I understand there's not that funding available for that. But could you recommend any online training?
Well, I'd like to.
It was like county lines.
I think it was brilliant, by size, and it has dropped off the last 18 months, hasn't it? And I think that if I speak to both Forage District and North Devon District, I think it's really good, and Campy's there behind me, so nodding as well. I think it's resurrected, it's really low cost.
We've
Most
got a
people-
lot of new councillors.
Exactly, new councillors, the people that do the talks are normally doing it entirely for free, so it's about just providing office space, to be honest.
Oh, right.
So for me, I think if we make the commitment now that we'll set to the bite side, what would be really useful is, what would you like the bite side training to be on? So we've done some proof, you might want to recycle some of the old bite side training, or either topics that you really like. So if I put that back to both district, to yourselves, to say, actually, is there anything particular you'd like to have? We've had, asked Jessica, there've been county lines, there've been modern day slavery. Everyone help me out?
Suicide awareness.
Sorry?
Suicide awareness.
Suicide awareness, training, will be. So yeah, I prefer my workers of the community partnership to come up and have it free. That's, it has dropped off in fairness, and that must.
It's sort of a pilot and a little bit of a forum, because I'm rather new in post. But I have got planned, and these going ahead as of the next fortnight, I do inputs with the customer services team locally here in order to sort of inspire and involve their forward-facing staff who have suffered some significant challenges in terms of difficult customers, abusive customers. But also, as I say, just to ensure that they feel as though they're equipped to be able to carry on sharing that demand in the spirit that we try to foster in the sort of new face of the CSP that we have here. It was something I was doing a little bit of a forum and the reinvigoration of those bite-sized sessions. I do have Councillor York's details. I will make it a priority to link in with her. If she can then link in with your opposite number over in Torridge. What all I need basically is what your wish list is to those, and then we can do our level best to see whether we can manage those expectations. We need those expectations in 2024. But that's more than within my grasp to be able to do that, and it is something I'll be really happy to get going.
That's really good news.
If we get Ian, Tim and Kev, if you agree on a plan for the year, I say 4 topics for the year or 3 topics, whatever, and just put it out for 2024, then we'll get it out early doors. You can share it with members, share it with all your frontline workers, and it's not just for this, it's for other partners that aren't here as well, to their frontline workers to come up to as well. But yeah, I think we need to bring it back.
And just to reinforce, it really is about what you want. It's not, obviously we've got a range of resources we can tap into, and people we can bring in, but we're led by the community and the members about what we want, what you want. So
We'll have a think and get that.
Yeah.
I did want to mention one other thing, in relation to the link centres. We sort of moved away from that. Just to say that last week we had our full council meeting, and we had representatives from, I think, Devon Healthcare, Devon NHS Trust. And I asked the question about the link centres and obviously how Devon County Council seem hell bent on closing them regardless, and how the impact would be on the services like the police, like the hospitals when people reach crisis. And I said, do you have any direct influence on these decisions? And they said, no. And I said, have you responded to the consultation? He said, oh, I think we have. But that's as far as it goes. And it's, yeah, so that might be worth, getting a bit more health input, like I think Tony said earlier as well. So, yeah, just thought I'd relay that information for you. Yeah.
And people to check that they actually responded.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, who has responded? I don't know how we find that out.
The district came to that. So
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
If you remember, there was the question on the full council.
Yes.
And so the leader has done a report.
Yeah, brilliant. That's great. Brilliant. And I know Barton Town Council is doing so as well. Yeah. So any more questions before we close our meeting? No. Okay. Everyone happy? Thank you.
I haven't thanked Toby. I think. Thank you.